Now that you've read Slaughterhouse-Five, we are reading a second war story from Tim O'Brien. So Slaughterhouse-Five is, you read the first chapter in Slaughterhouse-Five, and you are reading How to Tell a True War Story from Tim O'Brien, which is a chapter in his masterpiece war novel, The Things They Carried. And there are really interesting similarities between these two stories. Now, Kurt Vonnegut wrote about his experiences in World War II. And his novel was published at the height of the Vietnam War, 1969, which likely contributed to why it was immediately at the top of bestseller lists because it was so timely and relevant and brilliant. And Tim O'Brien, the author of this next story, served in the Vietnam War. And his book about the Vietnam War, The Things They Carried, came out in 1990. So again, 20 years went by for him to get this important big story out. Tim O'Brien once said he was often associated with this sort of anti-war sentiment towards Vietnam, or as a sort of, poster author for criticism of the Vietnam War, but he very much rejected that. He was just writing about what happened to him in a fictional way. But he did say in several interviews that he was really sort of dismayed with how little people understood about what went on during the Vietnam War. So if you think about Slaughterhouse-Five revising this myth of war making boys into men, Tim O'Brien is in conversation with that idea, because what he's trying to do is convey the realities of the war and what it actually is. And I think that this is a nice sort of full circle moment. We started with our first tradition of romanticism, which is this idea of heroic sort of triumph. And these last authors are taking that idea and exposing what their, heroic war hero stories look like. Now, as you're reading this, I will warn you, there is some violence and gore in this one, as it's a war story. I want you to be thinking about Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-Five and the similarities between the two as well as the differences. And I also want you to consider this as you wrap up this unit and prepare for your quiz, which is these are two separate authors, separate generations, separate wars, separate lives. And they're both fixated on how do you tell this story. Kurt Vonnegut says in the first chapter of Slaughterhouse-Five, I thought it would be easy and I could just write down what I had seen. But how to tell that story is something that they focus on. And I want you to think about the why there. Why is that something that they focus on? And what is it that they're saying about how to tell war stories? What are we supposed to take away from that? What is the message, the meaning behind all of that? I want you to, think about what is the metafiction purpose here and what messages we are to take out of these stories. I look forward to our next text in this unit and furthering that conversation on postmodern war stories.